Good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
It is good to see you.
It is good to be here. We are indebted to the great God of heaven for this particular day. This being the first Sunday of 2019. We got 51 more to go. We've seen 52 already. Many others. We're thankful to God for you being here. We're just elated and thankful that God has blessed us to see a new year. We hope, trust, and pray that as many people do every year, that you have some better resolves and better resolutions for 2019 to help you draw closer unto God. And if you're visiting for the first time, you started New Year right. We're grateful and we're appreciative of you being here with us for this first Sunday of 2019. We thank you for your presence. The Apostle Paul was always one who was always working to improve his life. He was always wanting to demonstrate his faithfulness to God. And Paul could set himself out as an example. 1 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse number 1, where Paul says, "Be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Christ." So Paul, in his quest to be a faithful follower of Jesus Christ, could also hold himself out to be an example. But then also, the Apostle Paul was always one who was still learning and still growing and still trying to better himself. At least that's what we find out from the Apostle Paul in our text in Philippians chapter 4. Beginning at verse number 5, verse number 11, Paul says, "Not that I speak in respect of want, for I've learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content." Paul says, "I know both how to be abased, I know how to abound. Everywhere in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to be abound and also to suffer need." Then that famous verse, Philippians 4:13, Paul says, "I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me." Verse number 14, "Notwithstanding that ye did well and that ye did communicate with my affliction." Paul says that he had learned some things in his life. And I believe that when you look at Paul, Paul was a learned man. He was a learned man, and he was continuing to learn. There are a couple of things that stand out in verses 11 and 12 that help us realize that Paul was a learner. First of all, one of the things Paul learned about life, that he was always going to be a student of life. He was a continuous student. And Paul would say words like, "I have learned," in verse number 11. "I am instructed," in verse number 12. But when you think about that, you know, there are some people who act as if they can't learn anything. Amen. They can't be made better. Amen. They can't improve. They can't make adjustments. Don't you know people like that? Haven't you heard people say stuff like this? "Well, if you're going to take me, if you're going to be friends with me, if you're going to be with me, you got to take me as I am. Take it or leave it." You know what? People got to accept me the way I am because I'm not changing. A person who speaks like that's a foolish person. Amen. Because you act as if you can't be taught anything. Amen. You know everything. Amen. You got the world and God and all things pertaining to life and godliness and eternity all figured out. A person that speaks like that, that's a dangerous person. But Paul was one who was always willing to learn. He was still growing. As a matter of fact, Jesus says in Matthew chapter 11 and verse number 28, Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Jesus says, "Take my yoke upon me, take my yoke upon you, and learn." Learn of me. Jesus said, you can learn some things from me. It don't matter how old you are. Amen. It don't matter how much money you got. Amen. It does not matter your status in society. You can learn some things. As a matter of fact, let me tell you something right now. You can learn something from these children walking around here. Amen. You can learn something from these young folks. And so we can always learn so that we can be made better. As a matter of fact, look at Paul. And I understand where Paul got his learning from. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter 11, Brother Hampton. Begin at verse number 23. I want you to notice now, Paul was a continuous student. Paul was a learned man. 2 Corinthians 11, verse number 23, beginning.
"Are they ministers of Christ? I speak as a fool. I am more in labor, more in abundance."
Now what Paul is doing here, Paul in the chapter, in the context, the immediate context of 2 Corinthians 11, Paul is showing that those false apostles are not real. He is exposing the false apostles. And Paul says, in order to expose the false apostles, let me give you my resume.
All right.
Let me tell you some things and show you some things that let you know that I'm a true apostle of Jesus Christ. So that's what he's doing here as we're reading this. Read on.
In stripes above measure.
Paul said, look at some of the things I've gone through. In stripes.
Above measure.
Above measure. Paul took a whole lot of beatings.
Yes, sir.
As an apostle. As a Christian.
All right.
As a minister of the gospel. Not the false apostles. What else does he say?
In prison more frequent.
Paul said he, as an apostle of Jesus Christ, he spent some time in jail. He was incarcerated. Read on.
In death are.
Paul said there were some times in my life where I was near death. Because of him being a Christian, him being a gospel preacher. Read on.
Of the Jew, 5 times receive our 40 stripes, say one.
Paul says on 5 separate occasions he received 39 stripes. 195 stripes Paul got laid on him.
All right.
For being an apostle, for being a preacher. What else does it say?
Thrice I was beaten with rods.
Paul said I was beaten. What else?
Once was I stoned.
I was stoned on one occasion, Acts chapter 14, verses 19 through 21. What else does it say?
I suffered shipwreck.
Paul said I was out in the ocean. I suffered shipwreck. That's Acts chapter 27, Acts chapter 28.
All right.
3 times. What else does it say?
A night and a day I have been in the deep.
Paul said I've been out there in some deep waters. What else does it say?
In journey, often in perils of water.
In journeys and perils.
Perils of robbery.
Paul said there was some time people trying to rob him. They were trying to kill him.
All right.
They were trying to set Paul up. What else does it say?
In peril by my own countrymen.
Paul said sometimes the Jews were trying to kill me. What else?
In peril by the heathen.
The Gentiles were trying to kill me. What else does he say? Mind you, he got to preach to both Jews and Gentiles. They try to kill him. Paul says, in perils of my own countrymen, that's the Jews. Then the heathens, that's the Gentiles. What else?
In perils in the city.
In the city.
In perils in the wilderness.
In the country.
In perils in the sea.
In the sea. Paul said, I can't escape this stuff. I can't get away from it. And then Paul even says, in perils by my own brethren.
False brothers.
False brethren. Sometimes some fake brothers in the church trying to do me some harm. What does it say?
In weariness and painfulness.
Paul said, I done had some difficult times in my life. In weariness, in painfulness, in fastings, in hungers, and in thirst. Now I want you to pay attention to what he just said. Fastings, thirst, and hunger. Isn't that what he alluded to in Phillipians chapter 4? Paul said, I know how to be hungry, and I know how to be abased. I know how to be full. Paul learned those things from life. You know what? When you think about Paul, Paul graduated with honors from the school of hard knocks.
Yes, sir.
That's what Paul learned that from. Paul got that stuff from life. You know, they have this saying, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. And I imagine from whatever city or region you may be from, you can make that same claim. And people in Memphis will say, if you can make it in Memphis, you can make it anywhere. But let me tell you something. It don't matter if it's Memphis, Montgomery, New York. If you can make it in life,
You can make it.
you can make it.
All right.
Paul made it through life because he trusted God. So here's Paul learning how to be abased and how to be abound by some of those things that he's experienced. So Paul will show us in life, you're going to be always growing.
Yes.
You're going to be going through some things, some experiences where they'll always challenge you. It always things going to come up against your faith. And so Paul was a continuous student. Paul learned that. Another thing Paul learned how to be content though. Go back to Philippians chapter 4, verse number 12. What does he say there? He says, I know how to be abased and I know how to abound.
And I know how to abound. Everywhere in all things. I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. Paul said he learned contentment. Paul learned the secret of life. Paul is showing us that he says in verse number 11, I have learned in whatsoever state I am therewith to be content. What we have to learn is that we're always going to be students of life.
That we're always going to be going through some things, some challenges in our life, but can we learn how to be content? The Bible talks a great deal about contentment. Look at Proverbs chapter 30. Proverbs chapter 30, beginning verse number 7. The proverb writer says, 2 things have I required of thee. Deny me them not before I die. Well, what are these 2 things?
Remove, far from me, vanity and lies.
The first thing he said, you know what, take away from me vanity. Things that are empty. Things that have no real significance in life. Then he says, remove far from me lies. Yeah. The proverb writer says, I don't want things in my life that are empty, and I don't want lies. What does he say?
Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food convenient for me.
The proverb writer says, I just want to be content. Feed me with food convenient, satisfactory to me. Just let me be content. And then here in the next verse, he said, the reason I just want to be content in life because I don't want to live on either end of the extreme. He says, lest I be full
and deny
thee and say, who is the Lord? Lest I be poor and steal.
And take the name of the Lord God in vain.
He said, now I don't want to be on either end of the spectrum. I don't want to be so rich when I got everything where I feel like I don't need God. And so many people live like that. You know, a lot of our uber rich people, they feel like they don't need God. But who are they breathing?
God.
Amen.
God.
Who are they breathing?
God.
God. Who earth they living on to make them millions? Gods. So he said, now I don't want to be so rich where I forget God and I deny God, but at the same time, it sure ain't no blessing in poverty. Well. He said, I don't want to be poor either where I have to steal, where I have to rob and kill. Nobody want to live like that. So what we want to do, we just want to be content.
Yes.
We want to be content right there in the middle of both extremes. Let's just learn how to be content.
Oh, yeah.
Paul was in 1 Timothy chapter 6. But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. Having food and raiment, let us therewith be content. We need to learn how to be content. The Hebrew writer says in Hebrews 13:5, let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as ye have. For he has said, I'll never leave thee, nor forsake thee. God will help us be content. Amen. He will help us. Verse number 6, so that we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper. What shall I fear what man would do unto me? God will help us to be content. Can we learn how to be content in 2019? Or are we the kind of people that we always grasping to live like our next door neighbors? We want to be just like them. We want to be just like them. We want to have everything they have. Drive what they drive. Have the kind of money that you drive. As my grandfather told me one day, you need to figure out how they got it. So many times, we want to be like the people next door across the street and around the corner, stuff like that, but you need to figure out how they got it. Amen. And so we just need to learn how to be content. Paul learned that. And then also a third thing Paul learned in Philippians chapter 4 when he says, I know how to be abased and I know how to abound. The word abased, that means to be humbled by needs. In the context of Philippians chapter 4, here's Paul in prison and he is relying on the financial support of the Philippian congregation. Paul would say in verses 8 and 9 in those previous verses that, you know what? They wanted to give to Paul, but they lacked the opportunity. So there were some times where Paul found his life, but Paul had a shortage. Right. And he had some needs in his life sometimes. And so Paul said, you know what? I know how to make it. I know how to be humble by needs, but I also know how to abound. Paul has said in whatever circumstance in his life, Paul said, I know how to adjust. So we know how to be a base on. We done had some time in our lives where we've been hungry. We done had some needs. We done had to borrow some money. That's what he's saying. Amen. Paul said there was some time when I had to be humble because I needed some things, and then I had to trust God. I had to rely on brethren. There's some time in our lives. When you start going back over the times of your life and how you got where you are right now, you ain't got this far by yourself. Amen. How many times you done borrowed money from me and never paid you back? Still owing folk. And you hate to see him coming, don't you? And she gonna ask him $20. So we've been abased. We know how to be humble. And so Paul says, whether it's abasement, whether it's abounding, I know how to adjust. And Paul said that is the secret to life. When you think about all the stuff Paul learned, what we're talking about this morning is, what have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about yourself? Because when we look at Phillipians chapter 4, verses 11 through 14, we're looking at and we're describing what Paul learned about himself. But I believe it's imperative for us to understand, what are we learning about ourselves? Reason being, I want you to notice this. Have you learned about you? Do you know how many people living right now, going through our life, and they don't even know about themselves? Have you learned about you? I want you to notice a couple things. First of all, have you learned the good things about you, if you got good things about you? You got to qualify that. Have you learned these things? Have you learned the good things about you? Do you have a good attitude? Are you a person of high character? Are you a person who has dignity about yourself? Are you a kind of individual who's always encouraging people? Are you faithful? Are you humble? Are you honest? Are you a person of integrity? Are you an optimistic type of person? Are you a person who always views the world as, you know, good things gonna come out? Have you learned that about yourself? Are you a pleasant kind of individual? Do people like to be around you? Have you learned those things about yourself? What you notice a couple of these passages, because these things should stand out. First of all, look at this man by the name of Cornelius. Look at Acts chapter 10. Acts chapter 10, if you will. Acts chapter 10, beginning in verse number 1. I mean, you should know these things about yourself. Acts chapter 10, notice what it said about Cornelius.
There was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian band.
First of all, just notice this. Cornelius was just anybody.
Oh, no.
You go down to Caesarea, you're going to know about this man by the name of Cornelius. He wasn't just anybody. He wasn't just somebody who just fit in with the crowd. Cornelius stood out in his community. Read on.
A devout man.
He was a devout man.
And one that feared God.
A man that fears God with all his house.
Which gave much alms to the people.
He was a generous man.
And prayed to God always.
A praying man, let me tell you. Y'all better be glad Cornelius married.
All right.
Can you imagine women that would be clamoring in the line trying to get to Cornelius? All this wonderful stuff said about Cornelius. And he got a job working for the Roman government. He got benefits. Generous man, a praying man, a high character man.
Yes, sir.
These are the kind of people that we should strive to be like.
Amen.
And so notice the wonderful things that are said about Cornelius. And then when you get down to verse number 22, his servant said he is worthy. They told Peter, Cornelius, he's a worthy man. You know what? You want to come to Cornelius' house because he's worthy. Even his employees said he's a good man. You know, if you want to find out how people really are, don't talk to them. Talk to the people that's closest to them and know them. Talk to the children sometimes. Talk to the neighbors sometimes. Talk to the co-workers sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
That's who you find out. Because, you know, sometimes we like to paint a different story, don't we? And so his servant says he was a good man. That he was a just man and a righteous man and one that was worthy. Not only that, but the Bible describes the kind of people that we should be. Galatians chapter 5, verse number 22 and 23. We ought to be people who are filled with the fruit of the Spirit. But the fruit of the Spirit is love and joy and peace and long-suffering and gentleness and goodness and faithfulness and meekness and temperance. Against such there is no law. Those are the kind of people we ought to be. People who are filled with the fruit of the Spirit. Paul in Ephesians will call them the fruits of righteousness. So those are the kind of people that we should strive to be. Did you know that about yourself? Not only that, but look at Acts chapter 4, verse number 13. Acts 4, verse number 13. Notice what was said about Peter and John.
It said, now when they saw the boldness of Peter and John and perceived that they was unlearned and ignorant men, they marveled and they you took knowledge of them that they had been with Jesus.
Now notice now, here's Peter and John preaching the gospel. The religious leaders, the religious council, they brought Peter and John, and they want to know why y'all keep preaching in the name of Jesus. And notice now, they got Peter and John, they got him in front of this crowd. One thing they noticed about Peter and John, different from when they last saw. They noticed that they were ignorant and unlearned men. That just simply means they didn't go to the rabbinical schools of that day. They didn't have all of these degrees and all these letters and things behind their names. But one thing they did have, they knew they had been with Jesus. The reason I included that in there because everything that's said about character, good attitude, being honest and faithful, all those things can be said about Jesus. And notice now, they took knowledge of the fact they had been with Jesus. So let me tell you something. The fact they had been with Jesus let me know Jesus had rubbed off on them.
All right. Yes, sir.
Are we concerned about who our children associate themselves with? Yeah. Who they hang around? You know why? Because we understand who you hang around with, amen, that's who you likely become. They had been with Jesus. That's all of these things could be said about Jesus. You know those things about yourself? Have you learned those things about yourself? But then look at the other side of the equation. Do you know the negatives, the bad, the cons about yourself? Yes. Do you have a bad attitude? You dishonest? You got a filthy mouth? Are you jealous? Are you a liar? Are you a person who is negative all of the time? Or are you toxic? Are you unpunctual? That just simply means you're always late? Are you untrustworthy? Because we would like to think that all of us are on the left side, but truth be told, a lot of us are on the right side. But the question is, do you know those things about yourself? Have you learned those things about yourself? And this is why you need to know these things about yourself. I want you to pay attention to this. Read me in 1 Corinthians 15:33. Be not deceived. Evil communication corrupt good manners. If you're over here on this right side over here, you need to think about that. And guess what? You know it.
Amen.
You know if you're this kind of individual. Paul will go through a list of just negative traits in Ephesians chapter 4, beginning at verse 25. What does he say?
Wherefore putting away lying.
Are you a liar? He said you got to put that away. Wherefore, putting away lying, speak every man what?
Truth.
Just tell the truth. That's all you got to do. If you tell the truth, you got to have a good memory. Tell the truth, speak every man truth with his neighbor's wife. For we are members one of another. Then what does he say next?
Be angry.
Are you kind of person that's always angry? You got a bad temper? You just blow up at any and everybody? Always angry at everybody? For everything? What else does he say?
And sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath.
Don't let the sun go down on your wrath. What else does he say?
Neither give place to the devil.
He said, don't give place to the devil. Are you the kind of individual always letting the devil come in your house spend the night? I mean, is he always at your house? And sometimes people talk like that though. You know what, the devil, he sure busy at my house. Well, keep him at your house. Keep him at your house. Neither give place to the devil. What else does he say?
Let him that stole.
You're not a kleptomaniac, are you? Brother Parker told me something very interesting this morning. Somebody found $450. $400 bills and another $100 bill cut up. And somebody brought it and gave it to him. Let him that stole still. So you know how bad people hurt right now. Somebody could use that $450. But that's not your money. Let him that stole steal no more. But do what?
But rather, let him labor, working with his own hands. Man
got to go to work. A man has got to go to work. You got to work with your hands. There is no other way around this thing. Let me ladies, sisters, I can't emphasize this enough. If a man will not work for himself, he's not going to work for you. Don't be tricked and thinking you're going to marry him and he's going to change. It's not going to happen.
That's all right, Freeman.
It's not going to happen.
That's all right. That's it.
How can a man be 30, 45 years? He didn't do that for himself. You come into the picture, you look nice, you smell good, all of a sudden he will change. It's not going to happen. We got to work. There's no other way around this thing. Let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hand. I like the next part.
The thing which is good.
The thing that is good is called a paycheck. That's the thing that's good. I know that's the thing that's good because what does he say next?
That he may have
something to give.
Him that is
Instead of stealing, you work so the next time you want something, you can pay for it yourself. The thing that is good is a paycheck. So he'll be able to help people instead of stealing from people. What else does he say next?
There's no corrupt communication.
Oh, you got that individual? Y'all know my voice got loud when I started talking about this stuff. Let no corrupt communication proceed. I mean, are you that kind of individual? For the life of me, I never understood why people use cuss words. You know, most of the time, people do bad stuff because there's some good that may come out of it. For example, somebody may steal because there's a benefit that comes out of stealing. You get some money, you get some property. But for the life of me, I've never understood why people use cuss words. There is no benefit other than you saying it. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that you may do what?
That they may minister.
That you may minister grace unto the
hearers.
You got to be concerned how you talk to people. Everybody can't be on the recipient end, on the receiving end of your cuss words. I'm just saying, and we laugh about this. We might not even be dealing with this. We may not even be doing with it. But some folks at the church of Ephesus were. Some Christians at Ephesus, they were dealing with some of these things. They were stealing. They were lying. They were giving place to the devil. They were using corrupt speech. Don't tell me the saints won't do it. What does he say?
And grieve not the Holy Spirit.
Don't grieve the Holy Spirit. Don't quench the Holy Spirit. What else does he say?
Whereby you are sealed until the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath.
Are you a bitter kind of person? I mean, could Tyler Perry write a movie about your life? Just always bitter? Then he says, let all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, and evil speaking with all malice. I mean, do you fit in that picture? Paul is saying we can't be these kind of people on the right side of this board. We ought to check that stuff. But here's the thing. Do you know this about yourself? The reason being, and this is so very critical, as people, as social creatures, we desire and maintain various relationships with other people. Now, if you don't know those bad things about yourself, the reason you need to know these things is because we are always engaged in some type of relationship. Whether it's brethren, as members of the church, in business relationships, are we classmates? Is it family? Is it friendships? I mean, we are engaged in all of these type of relationships. And what ends up happening is, if we don't know about ourselves, we take them bad character traits into these relationships. That's exactly what we do, and that's why we need to learn about ourselves. Because we'll take the bad into these relationships, and then we expect other folk to change instead of us. And see, we know this when it comes to animals, don't we? When it comes to animals, we know how this works. The reason I know that, because we always say, you know what, a leopard can't change his spots. If it walks like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, it must be a duck. Now, why can't we understand it when it comes to ourselves and our relationships? So we need to understand what we are bringing to the table in terms of our relationship. But if I don't learn about myself, and I go into one of these type of relationships, I'm going to make everybody else miserable. And that's why I need to learn about myself. You think about that list for just a moment. You know how many people are miserable because their best friends won't change? You know how many people are miserable because their family members won't change? You know how many people are miserable because their spouse won't change? You know how many children are miserable because their parents won't change? And so what we're saying is, you have to get to a point where you learn about yourself, and when you learn the good and the bad about yourself, what areas you need to improve in, just be honest with yourself and say, you know what, I need to do better. And then, hopefully, throughout the course of your life, you have been learning and assessing your own life. Not only that, not only have you been learning and assessing, hopefully you're honest with yourself. You see, you can't trick yourself. As Bobby Womack said on one occasion, you can't jive yourself. You may trick other folk, but you can't jive yourself. You can't trick yourself. So as you learn about yourself and you assess the pros and the cons, are you going to be honest with yourself? Hopefully, 2019 will be the year that you will allow God to shape and mold your life for the bettering. The reason being, before we go to these passages, one thing that's described about God in the Bible, especially in the books of Isaiah and Jeremiah, God is identified as the potter.
Yes.
And mankind is identified as the clay. And I know one thing about pottery and clay, the clay don't have any more power than the potter. And so God, as the potter, he can shape some things, he can mold some things, and he can fix some things in your life. Will you allow 2019 for God to do that for you? So you can be a better person. Notice, now I want you to notice David on one occasion. Look at David in Psalm 32. Psalm 32, verse number 1.
Blessed is he whom transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered.
David said, blessed is the man whose transgression is forgiven and his sin is covered. What you need to know from Psalm 32 and Psalm 51, both of those psalms are connected to David's transgression with Bathsheba.
Yes.
Both of them. Psalm 32, David says it's a wonderful feeling to be blessed, to have your sins forgiven, to have transgression. Isn't that a wonderful feeling?
Oh, yeah.
It is a wonderful feeling to wake up and know you've been forgiven by God. That's the greatest feeling in the world. So David understood that. But then also look at David again in Psalm 51, the same context of his life. And notice what he says in verse number 12.
Restore unto me the joy of thy salvation.
Now this is before he was forgiven. David says, restore unto me the joy of thy salvation. What else?
Uphold me with thy free spirit.
Uphold me with thy free spirit. He's longing for a relationship with God. He's longing for forgiveness. He's just longing to be at one with God. But then notice verse number 13. Then he'll do what?
Then will I teach transgressors the way.
David
Sinners
says,
shall be converted unto thee.
before I try to teach other people about God, let me first get right with God. David said, let me first get right with God. Let me take care of myself, and then I'll teach transgressors thy ways. The reason we have this before us is because what David is showing us, he wanted God to forgive him first. And he wanted to be right with God before he can go and tell somebody else about God. David allowed God to shape and mold him, even with something as terrible as what he did with Bathsheba and Uriah. You go back